On today's show, all good things must come to an end.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as they fall in game number 5. And now the season is over. A bitter pill to swallow as a Capitals fan is there was a lot of hope around this year's team, all that they accomplished, winning the Metro, winning the Eastern Conference, but everything ended in a hurry tonight. Where did the Capitals go ahead? A bit later, I'll talk about final moments and looking ahead. I will break down the game and ultimately where do the Capitals go from here. It's interesting that this team was built and it appeared to be pretty bulletproof. It appeared to be pretty infallible. But the one thing that was apparent is the Capitals were not built to go any further, as the Carolina Hurricanes were that much better of a team. And ultimately, we have to give credit where credit's due. A bit later, I'll talk about missed chances and narrow margins. That was the tough thing, as you saw Anthony Beauvillier get on the board, and there was a feeling like they're going to do it. They're going to win Game 5. And then Matt Roy scores a goal, but not so fast, as Connor McMichael was off. Your mind starts to what could have been had things gone the other way. But just to get it going here, heavyweight fight ends in heartbreak. And, like I say, going into this season, I think the bar was set rather low for this team that, you saw the moves that were made in the offseason, the additions of Pierre-Luc Dubois that was met with a lot of snickering, a lot of laughter from people that cover the NHL going, good luck with that guy. As it turned out, has been absolutely huge for the Capitals all season. Yet another guy that didn't really show up too much in the postseason, but all things considered, this team had me feeling pretty good for a line's share of the season. And, like I say, if you just take a look around the playoff picture there, you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets, for example, a team that was favored to win the Stanley Cup, to win everything. Look how they're doing. And take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights that, it's difficult for the Capitals and everything they have accomplished, from winning, like I said, the Eastern Conference, winning the Metro. But when you come up against some stiff competition like the Carolina Hurricanes, it really shows what your team is made of. So let's dive into that in this first segment, talking about the bitter heartache. Being a Capitals fan, is there was a real feeling for me of optimism that maybe something crazy can happen and they can win a Stanley Cup, that maybe they can win one more cup under the Alex Ovechkin era. But let's dive into that. And we're breaking down Game 5 of the second round series between the Caps and the Hurricanes, a game that felt like a prize fight with the final punch coming from Carolina. And if you are an everydayer of the show, I said yesterday that I kind of had a feeling that maybe they would find a way to win Game 5 since it was back at home, and you knew that it was going to be all hands on deck. You were going to see the very best of the Capitals. And to be clear here, in the first 2 periods, not so much. The Capitals decided to pour it on in the third period, and that's kind of been the MO of this team this season, hasn't it? That when they feel the game kind of slipping away, that's when they want to get engaged. But it was ultimately too little, too late. And you take a look at the shots on goal as a metric here. First period, 8-4 favored Carolina. Second period, 8-5 favored Carolina. Third period favored the Capitals 10 shots versus the Carolina Hurricanes So the total there, 21-19 Carolina as far as shots on goal is concerned. But, you take a look at it. It was that Jordan Staal, that snapshot at 9:38 that really kind of, that was where the momentum was going for the Carolina Hurricanes. My feeling was that whoever gets on the board first is going to win the game. But, that's kind of just your mind going down those negative tributaries of like, here they go. But then all of a sudden, Anthony Beauvillier, backhand shot, ties the game at 13:41. And I'm thinking to myself, so you're telling me there's a chance. And then my feeling was really starting to grow, like I said, when Matt Roy scored that goal and Connor McMichael was offside. So that is just kind of on more of a granular level how everything went in this game. Like I say, shots on goal, 21-19 versus in favor of Carolina. Neither team made the most of their opportunities on the power play. It was just the skilled game of the Carolina Hurricanes kind of just adhering to the script that Rod Brindamore laid out for them. They didn't really deviate. There was some physical flare-ups here and there, but all things considered, that is what got Carolina into victory lane, was just sticking to the script. They didn't want to do anything crazy. They didn't want to drop the mitts. They didn't want to spend a lot of time in the penalty box. They just wanted to do the things that got them in this position in the first place. But for 58 minutes, the game had tension of overtime. Both teams traded chances, heavy hits, and hard-nosed defense. But with 1:59 left, it was Andrei Svechnikov who scored the GWG from a tight angle, silencing Cap One and ending the Capitals season with a 3-1 loss. And that's the book on Logan Thompson. And if you're not familiar, it's that severe angle shot was the Achilles heel of Logan Thompson. They were talking about that in the broadcast, that he had a hard time stopping that. Kind of been the book on him this entire series. So, it's one of the things that maybe wasn't brought to light, but was by broadcasters that was the weakness in Logan Thompson's armor, was that sharp angle shot. But all things considered, the Capitals pushed hard, played arguably their best game of the series. And I agree with that sentiment. Of course, it would be easy to draw to the game that they actually won in this series. But all things considered, I'm proud of this team, and I'm doing this one live for you guys because, well, this is the last one of the season, and this show is not going anywhere. It'll be Locked On Capitals all summer. I'll have guests on here. I'll talk about, pending unrestricted free agents, that kind of thing. It's full go. I just wanted to have kind of a special moment with you guys for everyone that is with me each and every day on the show. You guys mean the world to me, but kind of a sad moment in a lot of ways that this whole thing has come to an end here. But the Caps pushed hard, played arguably their best game, and ultimately why it was even as close as it was. Because if you take a look at it, how they played throughout the entire season, and for this to kind of just come all apart in the playoffs is a bit hard. I was really thinking that, that there was going to be some June hockey in the cards for this team. But the Capitals exits the postseason after dropping 3 of the first 4 games, unable to flip the momentum despite showing signs of life in Game 5. And, the interesting thing is I was talking about this with someone at work, and I said, if they're going to lose this, I'd rather have them lose this in game number 5 than to have it go to 7 and then lose, just to stick the dagger in there and twist it a little bit. That is what I did not want to have happen. But, in a lot of ways, I talked about the Achilles heel of Logan Thompson. Thompson stopped 18 of 20 shots for the Capitals, while Freddie Andersen turned away 18 of 19. The true difference maker for the Carolina Hurricanes, for sure, was Freddie Andersen. And had it been for a less netminder, I'm not saying that the Capitals would have won the series, but what I am going to say is that I think the Capitals may have won maybe 1 or 2 more games. But at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And as a Capitals fan, you need to give credit where credit's due. Carolina played one heck of a series, and ultimately why they're moving on to the next round. But a tough pill as a Capitals fan, as there was a lot of feeling of optimism on the surrounding the team this year, that maybe this team, maybe one of, the last, it's going to be Ovechkin. Next year's his final year, that maybe this year was going to be that Cinderella story where the Capitals could pull a rabbit out of their hat and win another Stanley Cup. Not to be. Hopefully, better days lie ahead next season. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about missed chances and narrow margins. This game was much closer than it appeared. It could have gone the other way. I'll discuss straight ahead. There's nothing like playoff hockey, the energy, the rivalries, the nonstop action with Stanley Cup playoffs. Never been a better time to see it live, and Game Time makes getting into the building fast and affordable. Game Time gives you the last-minute deals, zone deals for deep discounts, panoramic and all-in pricing with no hidden fees. Plus, ticket prices often drop the closer you get to puck drop, so you can score big without overpaying. And that's the hard part, isn't it? Your favorite band, your favorite sports teams playing, but what is the view of the playing surface or the stage going to be? Well, take the guesswork out of it with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this special live edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So going to some of the comments here, at least Ovi beat the record and has a cup. That is definitely a feeling out there that was one of the biggest things. Had Ovi not been able to catch and pass Wayne Gretzky, I think this season would have felt a little hollow. We do have word from a Carolina Hurricanes fan here. I need to proofread these so there's nothing obscene in here. But from Will Parks here, he says, y'all fought hard, respect your big club. I think y'all need more speed. I think that that is true, and it's good to hear from some of the Carolina Hurricanes fans out there as well. Here is a comment from Ben DeRocha. He says, they completely outworked us all series. Sucks to lose on a soft goal like that because Thompson was awesome all playoffs. And I'll get to a bunch more of those comments to close out the show. So keep those coming here. And I sure do appreciate hearing from you guys in this episode. But in this next segment here, we're talking about missed chances and narrow margins. And like I say, it was much closer. I mean, who knows what direction this whole thing would have gone had that Matt Roy goal stuck. Say, Connor McMichael wasn't offsides, and it's all about momentum. That's the big thing is you don't know. I think that, for me, I think that if that goal had stuck, I think that the Capitals would have vacuumed up that momentum and just totally slammed the door shut. So they would have not let the Carolina Hurricanes in, just play a game of keep away. But I don't want to live in the land of woulda, coulda, shoulda. So let's talk about what went wrong, or maybe more accurately, what didn't go right. The Capitals only scored 7 goals in the 5-game series. That's not going to cut it against a disciplined, well-tested Carolina team. And it didn't cut it. And, to be clear here, if we want to even take a look back to round 1, when it was against the Canadiens, it wasn't, the Capitals didn't play as well as I thought that they would. I mean, they won the series, but I'm going to say that the Canadiens made it interesting, that I thought to myself, if the Capitals are struggling against the Canadiens, a team that isn't nearly as good as the Capitals, in my opinion, they are really going to struggle against the Canes, and that was the case. But the Caps came out strong in Game 5, had their best sustained offensive pressure early in the second period, and even had Matt Roy goal wiped off the board after an offside challenge. And how many of you guys and girls and whoever at home was thinking to yourself, really, this is happening right now? A Cap One was absolutely rocking. The feeling was like, we can do this. I mean, that we might be able to do the unthinkable and win game number 5. And after that, I mean, who knows? Sky's the limit. They were relentless in moments, especially that stretch in the second period where it felt like the ice was tilted, but they couldn't finish. That was the hard part, is the finishing part. And, like I did a short before this, just kind of summarizing what I thought about the game. And, you take a look at what Spencer Carberry did, a little bit too little, too late. I'm talking about Lars Eller out and Connor McMichael in at that third line center position. I thought they had some pretty good traction, all things considered, in this game. It makes you wonder, I hate to say it, what could have been had he done that earlier. But you take a look at it, Anthony Beauvillier tied the game in the first with that gritty goal using speed and physicality to beat Jacob Slavin and finish past Andersen. It was a glimmer of hope, and it sparked the team, but that was only the puck to beat Andersen all night. And you take a look at Beauvillier, I'm going to be honest with you, when the Capitals acquired him at the trade deadline, I wasn't thinking to myself, like, that guy is the magic bullet. He is the guy that is going to take this team to the next level. There was a lot of feeling of, is this guy going to be a healthy scratch? Is he going to be, a fourth line player? What the case is, all things considered, I have been very pleased with Anthony Beauvillier and, key, in this postseason here. I think all things considered, delivers a lot of speed, and that speed was apparent playing on that top line with Strome and Ovechkin. And speaking of Ovechkin, he had chances as well. Strome missed high. Mangiapane nearly tucked one in, but no one could break through when it mattered the most. And let's not forget the power play, special teams. Something that has not been the strong suit, at least the power play. 3 attempts, 0 conversions in the playoffs. That's the difference between a win and the end of the season. And, like I say, if you are an everydayer of the show, one of the things, I've spoke about ever since camp is making the most of your opportunities and special teams, and the impact that it was really put on full display in this second round here is that the special teams did not step up and not play a big role. And I don't want to say it was, exclusively the Capitals not making good on their power play opportunities, but I'm going to go ahead and say, it could have been in the Capitals' favor, and like I say, maybe won them 1 or 2 more games. Something that needs to get cleaned up. But all things considered, it was missed chances in narrow margins. That it wasn't a game, like the Carolina Hurricanes were out there and just mopped the floor with the Capitals. The Capitals made it interesting, but they did not play that full 60-minute game. You saw them poured on in the second, and more particular the third period, that had they applied that pressure the entire game, that intensity for a full 60 minutes, I very well might be talking to you guys about a Game 5 win and what lies ahead. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about final moments and looking ahead. What lies ahead for this Capitals team? I'll discuss straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this live edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. Talking final moments and looking ahead. I think it's important not to marinate, to dwell too much on this loss. It is what it is, as they say, to make it sound pretty generic. But, you take a look at it going into all of this, a lot of high hopes, but it wasn't to be. And it's about what are you going to change next season. Between now and the start of next season, those are the things that the Capitals, Chris Patrick, and Spencer Carberry, they're going to have to think about what they're going to change, because ultimately, despite what the Capitals did during the regular season, that did not translate to the offseason. So in the final segment, that is what we're going to talk about. The third period was peak playoff drama. That there was a feeling that the Capitals just might do it. That Svechnikov goal definitely vacuumed the energy out of Cap One, but also there was the feeling that maybe they would be able to get a greasy goal, something that was, part of the hallmark all season long, but it wasn't to be. The Capitals killed off a carryover penalty and came inches from taking the lead several times. Those are the things that are going to haunt me, I guess, this summer is, it was so close. But then, you think to yourself that they're kind of just backing their way. Say they find a way to win the second round. Say they just really poured it on. What would that mean for them in the following round? But Alex Ovechkin nearly pounced on that rebound. I was thinking to myself, they might be able to do it. Dylan Strome had space and missed by inches. And like I say, Cap One was buzzing. But then the gut punch with 1:59. Svechnikov found space and buried the GWG, and just like that, the Capitals' season was over. And, it was one of the things that I didn't want to believe it until it happened, but when it did, I was thinking to myself, well, now we can just kind of put this whole season to rest and start working on making this team better. But the frustration was apparent by everyone on the bench. You could see Logan Thompson when he got pulled from the net, that he could not believe it, because that last goal, I don't think he saw it. I think that he knew that it was a goal based on the fact of the noise and the celebration of the Carolina Hurricanes players. But all things considered, a tough break. And we hope that, the team can pick themselves up and just, kind of regroup and just reassess. And hopefully, I hate to talk about it, we're going to be a lot better next year, but that is the hope that they can start off on a better foot. So where do the Capitals, where do they go from here? This was a team that battled through injury, shook up lines late in the year, and made a push. But the offense dried up at the worst time. Management will have tough decisions to make this off season. And one of the things that I've talked about on this show, well, pretty much since the trade deadline, is why didn't they do more? And most people are saying, well, you don't want to mess up the chemistry, the vibes, that's a young person's term to use. The vibes, man, around this team are so good that you don't want to screw it up. If you have a guy in the locker room, it could mess everything up. Well, okay, sure. But you went out and picked up one forward. And, the feeling around the Capitals was that there was this glut of talent on the blue line. But Alex Alexiev was the best that you had. If you want to go down a little bit further, there was Ethan Bear and Dylan McElrath. But where was this glut of talent on the blue line that could have been plugged and played in Marty Fehervary's absence? Because one of the things, like I talked about in an earlier episode, is the impact of Martin Fehervary's absence. Absolutely huge. And, I don't want to make it sound like it's some sort of excuse or anything like that, but led the team in hits. That when you have a guy that brings that kind of physicality, that it is not just plug and play. You can't take Alex Alexiev out of the cryogenic deep freeze and just go out there and do yeoman's work. Just go out there. Alex Alexiev, I think, did the best that he could, considering the circumstance. And obviously, Spencer Carberry didn't want to risk it with Ethan Bear or Dylan McElrath. But those are the things, that I think about right now that, maybe you should have done more. And, the feeling out there is that we didn't want to mess up the roster or anything like that. That is, if I had one do-over, and I got to think that, if Chris Patrick had one do-over, it was not, stocking up a little bit more, because now the Capitals already talking about, a relatively early finish to all of this, greatness. That's what I'm going to summarize it. I think that this season was a great season. Like I say, winning the Metro, winning the Eastern Conference. It's just a bit too bad that it had to come to an end so early. So let's dig into a couple more comments here. Again, I have to do a little bit of proofreading here. I don't want to put anything on there that is up here, but the Caps need to make several changes in the offseason. And I think Brock Nelson, Nikolai Ehlers, and Ryan Lindgren need to top the priorities for the Caps. Ovi and Carlson need to hang the gloves up. Wow, some tough love for John Carlson, who has been, just a big contributor for this team for years. Again, I would not be too surprised if we find out that he was dealing with some sort of nagging injury, because it is not the Carlson that we're used to seeing. He's usually a minute monster, but just didn't seem like vintage Karlsson as far as Ovechkin is concerned. Ovi, wasn't clutch, shall we say, in the playoffs. He was, fixated on the whole Gretzky thing all season that, we could have, stood to see a whole lot more. As far as Brock Nelson, Nikolai Ehlers and Ryan Lindgren, I guess I would have to look into that a little bit more. I definitely think, that there could be some improvements, but all things considered, when we take a look at the forwards, there's not a whole lot I would change. The third line, I guess, of course, circle that, Lars Eller. Okay, goodbye. Thank you for your contributions. We'll never forget 2018. Okay, shut the door. I want to see what's behind door number 2. But I think in a lot of ways, Connor McMichael could be that good third line center, but I don't think that we need to change a whole lot as far as personnel. Like I said, I would want a little bit more depth. And you take a look at the blue line. If you had Martin Feravari in there, I'm pretty happy with the blue line, all things considered as well. So there's nothing that, jumps out at me. At the end of the day, I think it's more of a systems thing. I think that they could work on, you saw, how well the Carolina Hurricanes played. That was due in large part to Rod Brindamore and his great coaching that he implements out there. But let's take a look at another comment here. Ben, an Ovi fan since I was a little kid. I'm so sad that he is not going to win another cup. So, that very well could be the case. We don't know, and I don't want to live in this false narrative that maybe they're going to do it next year. I mean, they might, but, at the end of the day, who knows? I was pretty hyped on the Capitals all season long, thinking that they were going to be able to do something. And hey, at the end of the day, they made it to the playoffs. How many of the other 32 teams didn't make it to the playoffs? So, I don't want to be so jilted, so jaded that woe was me. The Capitals didn't win the Stanley Cup. They won a cup and they made it to the second round of the playoffs. I just don't want to dig too much in the doldrums here. So Ty Drenning here says, appreciate all your hard work this season, Dan. You are a true consummate professional and have a true talent for broadcasting and analysis. Thank you. A lot of these comments are from people that comment routinely on YouTube. I love you guys. White and Ty here. Thank you very much for the kind comments here. The next one here is from Caleb. Ovi has 1 cup. That's all that matters. Some have no cups, which is true as well. Another comment here from Ty, looking forward to the Caps reinvesting, heavily again this offseason. A top 6 forward and a top 4 demon each would really round out the lineup and allow for Ovi and Karlsson to take more of a back seat. Yeah, I mean, I think, with Karlsson, I don't want to dunk on him too much as he has been huge for the Capitals, but, he is a bit on the back 9 of his hockey career. And, I don't just think we can't get away with, John Karlsson, what we did years ago, where we had him out, out there so many minutes that I think his age is coming into focus. Or maybe, like I said, on breakdown day or thereabouts, we'll find out about some sort of injury, something of that nature. Another comment here from Caleb. I'm happy the Caps have won in my lifetime. Look at the Jets. They may never win, and they are always a good team in the regular season. Isn't that true? That's true about a lot of teams. You take a look at Toronto, and my thing was that if the Capitals did not win the Stanley Cup, I was not pulling for, but kind of just on, if I had to pick another team, I would have said the Toronto Maple Leafs, just because, they just love hockey so much in Toronto. Win or lose, and in the Canadian media does it so well. I got some time to talk to you guys here. One of the true treats of this whole playoffs was when the Capitals were playing the Canadiens, and to get your fingers on the pulse of the Canadiens was to just take a deep dive into Canadiens media. And there's so many great broadcasters out there in Montreal that cover that team very well, that it's very exciting. The Sick podcast, I listen to that on a daily basis. Such a fun broadcast to listen to. But in any event, getting back to the Toronto Maple Leafs here, they love their hockey there. That they haven't won a Stanley Cup since the 60s. So if there is a team of deserving to win another one, if I had to pick, I would say the Toronto Maple Leafs here. So another comment here, need Carberry to stay away from Laviolette mindset and lean into the youth of this team, continuing to progress and becoming the driving force of the team. As Ovi goes, so go the Caps is no more. Yeah, kind of the case, isn't it? There was a distraction this year, right? I think that's the biggest thing, is that there was a distraction with the Capitals all season long, and it wasn't winning the cup. That was just like a side benefit of Alex Ovechkin chasing down Gretzky. But when Alex Ovechkin finally did the thing, and he got past Gretzky, it's just like, well, what do we do now? Oh, wait, we're at the top of the Metro. We're at the top of the Eastern Conference. I guess we need to dig deep. That I think that, the distraction in trying to feed Ovi the goal so he could catch and pass Gretzky is kind of was a distraction. And they were kind of floundering, I guess, a little bit after that, as the latter part of the season was not that great. The next one here from Mojo Rider. Need more legit scoring threats. Can't rely on 39-year-old Ovi. And the thing of it is, I don't want to dunk on Ovi either. Put up career goals, or not career goals, but he put up a lot of goals. He caught and passed Gretzky. So I don't ever want to take away from Ovechkin. As Carlson, as Tom Wilson say, never doubt the big man. I'll never do that, but it's just interesting that he has not shown up clutch in the postseason here. Another one from White. We need Brock Besser. Couple votes. Brock Besser. Ty Denning here. Take a swing at Marner. Sign me up. I would take Marner all day, every day on the Capitals for sure. Another comment here from Mojo Rider. I thought Sandin didn't have a great series. Yeah, I'm gonna say that the Capitals' blue line throughout the regular season was really good, but left a bit to be desired in the postseason. I just think that Carolina really exposed a lot of weakness on the Capitals, and the blue line, trying to keep them to the outside, they struggled with it. And Sandin's not the biggest guy in the world, but all things considered, the regular season, I thought Sandin was fantastic. But the whole team in general, if I'm going to paint it with a broad brush, I don't think that that the blue line was that great. Logan Thompson was like the standout performer in this second round here. Another comment from White. Marner would be cool, but he always sucks in the playoffs. Yeah, isn't that interesting about the Toronto Maple Leafs, that it does seem like it is an all-star team on the ice? If you just sometimes take a look at the box score and look at the players on the Toronto Maple Leafs, and you think to yourself, how does this team not win cups every single year? Another comment from White here. He says, Besser is a proven playoff goal scorer and a clutch player. So a lot of buzz around Brock Besser. Yeah, I don't know about Marner. Would be a good fit. Caleb here says, yeah, we need a legit top 6 forward. Tired of relying. Okay, we've got that comment before. Marner's going to cost 10 to 12 million a year, probably, for sure. And then who's going to come off the books to accommodate that? That's the hard part. But, if you can get a guy like Marner, I think that, you could maybe open up a position or two. I think that would be a worthwhile thing to do here. Mojo Rider, Ovi and Carly both aged right before our eyes in this series. It was hard to see them struggle. Yeah, it is a bit of the turning of the page. Isn't it, for this Capitals team? That that was kind of the buzz around this team, is they were getting old and slow. And during the offseason, they got younger, not a lot younger, but they got younger, and it wasn't by design. Like I say, it was just based on circumstance. Backstrom did not respond to the hip resurfacing thing. TJ Oshie, it was Humpty Dumpty. They had to put them together after every game, approximately. And Kuzi, has more issues than Reader's Digest. So at the end of the day, that, Kuzi's thing coming off the contract, his contract coming off the books, and 2 players going on LTIR put the Capitals in this position as far as being able to make big acquisitions is concerned. Mojo Rider, Caps have Crystal again. Yes, another guy that you're going to want to circle for next year. So you got Leonard, who, sometimes I'm a bit hard on him here, but, people really pump the tires on him. Like, this guy put 30 goals up at Boston College. I think at the end of the day, I was hoping for, and I'm sure you guys were hoping for as well, was that we were going to see a glimpse of that. At the end of the day, he put up 1 empty netter goal. But in any event, next season, Crystal, maybe Ryan Leonard. And if they get a full season under their belt, I think that they could be lights out. So which players coming in from Hershey? That's another thing. So, I think that, you take a look at the players. I think that Miroshnichenko I think comes out or comes to mind right away, that I think that we saw him up on the big team. And I think he was a work in progress, but I would not be surprised to see Miro on the team in the fall. Of course, I think it's a lock that he's going to be on the team just in training camp. But I think that, depending on what happens this summer around July and free agency, that very well he could be make the roster. But again, we've had looks at him. He just hasn't lived up to potential. So on to the next comment here. In my opinion, the whole D-core looked really bad this series. I agree with that sentiment as well. Talking about here, poor Ovi man, been a fan his whole career. It's so sad to see him get to this level. It'll be interesting. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on Ovi? Is he going? I mean, he's got 1 year left, but, after this, is there the possibility that he rides out into the sunset like I did my thing, or is he going to just honor it and try to win one more Stanley Cup? I guess it remains to be seen here. Another comment here from Bob 1089. Great series, Canes fans. I was never as confident as everyone seemed to be. Amazing team you guys have there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty cool, but like I say, I'm not the guy. I'm not. Some people just wanted to dunk on the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, well, they outplayed the Capitals, plain and simple. Mojo Rider says here, you can't beat Father Time. It wasn't Father Time because, you take a look at it. Ovechkin and Karlsson were lightning in a bottle all season, lights out for the most part. But the postseason, they just kind of fell apart. I think that the Carolina Hurricanes just really are a taxing team to play against. Karlsson needs to retire or get traded ASAP. Wow. You take a look at the back of his hockey card. It's pretty impressive, but I know you can't live in the past here. Get Walker several times here. Hey, Canes are in their fourth. Under Brindamore, he's got the right players for his system. Agree there. So, there's a lot of comments here. Again, I love hearing from you guys here. And it's interesting that, we're already kind of pointing to what they should have done or what we could do. And that's ultimately the point of the season where we're at right now about what are they going to do. So just to talk about it here is I think they have some decisions to make. I know that Mangiapane and there's some other RFAs that could potentially be on the way out. But, Lars Eller, of course, I don't think that he is going to be coming back. I think that, like I said, thank you for your contributions. I don't think that there's a whole lot of players that are on 1 year deals that I necessarily need to see come back. One guy that I think I would circle is Anthony Beauvillier. I guess that I liked what I saw from him, that, if he could be a Capital, for a longer term thing, I think that would be a good thing. But I also I want to explore the options. I didn't, before we went into the playoffs here, I didn't think to myself that there's any glaring changes that needed to be made, but it was made apparent in this series that it's not good enough. But to circle back to what I said, I think in a lot of ways it's a systems thing as well. So some tough questions, and thanks again for your guys' comments. I plan to go live again throughout the summer here. It's just a bit difficult on game night sometimes as I'm trying to get all the notes together and post-game interviews and all that kind of stuff, that sometimes it makes it a little bit more difficult. But thank you guys for joining me on this last regular season edition, or the last 24-25 game of the 24-5 season edition of Locked On Capitals. And to all you people that have watched and listened throughout the entire season, I sure do appreciate it. Again, the show's not going anywhere. It is Capitals coverage year around on Locked On Capitals. So, all right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On NHL, as they have you guys covered 5 days a week, available wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.